estate. It's part of the access for all for people to come onto the forestry estate. So today I'm going to speak to you about Dalby Forest, which you come to here. Dalby is our main attraction site within the Yorkshire Forest District. We have lots of woodlands throughout Yorkshire. Some of them are very small woodlands with no car parks. Some of them have a few walking trails, some might have a toilet block, but Dalby is a very different attraction, so I'm going to speak to you about tourism in terms of what we've built here as an attraction. So what I'm going to look at today, I'm going to look at the history of Dalby. I'll just give you a brief overview about what Dalby has grown from. I'm going to look also at the other side of our business. So although we do tourism, and this site is a major tourism site, we have another arm to our business, which is timber production. And we have to balance the two businesses to allow everyone to have what they want. We've also got another arm, which is conservation and heritage management. So we've got to bear in mind any developments that we do in terms of tourism and developing facilities for people to come and enjoy. We've also got to bear in mind the conservation. So then we'll go on to look at the recreation and the facilities that we have here at Dalby. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the site developments that we've done over the last 5 to 6 years. We'll then look at the tourism promotion and events, so how we actually promote this area now as a destination in its own right, and what we turn working with others as well. So, looking at the history, the Valley of Dalby was created after the Ice Age. It's a glacial valley, and then there was lots of people who have lived here throughout history. But if we come a little bit further up to date, we've got King Henry I actually proclaimed that this whole area around here was a hunting forest. And he used it really for his hunting, and that was the hunting of deer and any other animals. Then we moved on from then, because the estate was given back to the public then, but it was also used as an area for wild rabbit foraging. So we have a lot of what's termed as rabbit types within the forest, where people kept rabbits and they used them for their fur, and that was usually really pre-1900. It's when we needed the actual material itself. Then we moved on a bit further, and then we came into the First World War. And in the First World War in Britain, we used a lot of timber. A real lot of trees were cut down. So the government decided that we can't just afford to cut down all of these trees and not replant them. We need to have a mechanism to replant the trees, and that's when it set up the Forestry Commission. The Forestry Commission was established in 1919, and that was for regrowing all the timber that we'd actually cut down to use in the war. And then from then we looked at Dalby was actually purchased here in 1921 by the Forestry Commission, and very early in the 1920s the trees started to be planted. We still have some trees in the forest that were planted in the 1920s that we've retained, and they were the first trees to be replanted in Dalby. During the wartime we had lots of female workers here on site, so most of the workforce was actually female during the war, particularly the Second World War, and that's the picture there on the right hand side is our lumberjills, we used to call them, and that's when all the men had generally gone off to war, and so we had a female workforce working in the forest. Just last year all the lumberjills in England have actually been nationally recognised, and we're hopeful here we're going to get a national monument to them eventually. And after the war, we then found that a lot of these men came back from the war and there wasn't any jobs for them. So Dalby became what was called an instructional camp. And that's the photo here. It was a camp that sprung up that allowed people to come here and gain work experience, if you like, and came to work in the forestry, usually during the week, and then they probably went home to their families in the cities at weekends. After the 1930s, the next demand for timber was pit props for coal mining. So lots of our trees had to be cut down for the actual wood structures that would keep up the pit props. So constantly there was a need for timber, and there still is today, so we keep doing that as part of our business. So when I say it's part of our business, it is our main business. We grow trees, we harvest trees, we replant them, we grow a next set of trees, and that wood goes into the timber market and is used for construction. Some of it is used for saw logs, some of it is used for fencing, some of it is used for now the new use is biomass fuel. But the first trees, as I said, were planted in 1920. Our main species of trees in the forest here is Sitka spruce, larch and Scots pine. They're predominantly what we plant here in Dalby because they grow very well here. So we can actually harvest the trees after around about 30 to 35 years. And that then will allow us to then replant again. Dalby, even though you'll hear from me today that we're going to go on to, we've got lots and lots of recreation, lots of people using the site doing a number of different things. It constantly is a working forest though, so we quite see from time to time the harvesting trucks coming in, they're going out fully laden with timber, and there's maybe a mountain biker along following the truck along, because it's just what happens. It is a very varied environment. In terms of conservation and habitat, Dalby is quite a unique environment, and we've got a number of species here, or flora and fauna, that are not present anywhere else in the UK. So we're very fortunate with a few orchids and a few other insects that we have sighted here that nowhere else has them. So we have that, but we also have a diverse environmental archaeology. So on the site we've got a number of what's termed sites of special scientific interest. They're protected by legislation, and we need to protect them for future. And that can be anything from enriched habitats, but it can also mean scheduled ancient monuments. So we might have some barrows, or we might have some pit alignments, which will be from the medieval time. Those are now all scheduled monuments, so we can't do anything to damage that resource. It's got to be maintained and protected for the future. We also then have a number of species that we have here that are also what we term as protected species. So badgers, otters, water gulls, great crested newts, honey buzzards, goshawks, and several species of bats. And again, they're all protected, so we do need to manage the environment to make sure that their environment isn't damaged, so that they can maintain their populations here. We work very closely with many organisations and local naturalists who are responsible for managing a lot of these natural aspects. And we quite regularly will have butterfly surveys, or we've got people coming to ring birds, so they can put a little ring on them so we know where they're going and when they're here. And doing lots of surveys on the site. So it's a very important part of our business, as well as what I'm going to turn onto recreation. With regards to recreation, then, Dalby Forest is a big forest, and you've just come into a small part of it here. Okay, Dalby is 3,600 hectares, which is about 7,200 football pitches, if you're trying to think of it in something that you might be able to relate to. Okay, it's around about 450,000 visits per year, so it's one of the biggest tourist attractions in North Yorkshire. As an outdoor attraction, that's quite an accolade, because we don't have any undercover areas for people to go into when it starts raining. The people who come here really need to be aware it could rain, it could snow, but we still get a huge amount of visitors. We've got a recreational access policy, which means it's free for people to come in on foot. The Forestry Commission woodland in the UK is actually dedicated under the Countryside and Rights of Way Act. And this means that people can walk anywhere in our woodlands. It's not the same for private woodlands, but it is for the public forest estate. We also grant permissive rights to cyclists and horse riders as well, so we let them come onto the land as well. And to encourage that, we try and give a free of charge policy for people who will walk onto the site, who will come on a horse or will bike onto the site. So where people are trying to minimise their use of transport, we say, well actually we're really supportive of that, you can come in for free. Once they start to bring their vehicles, then we will charge them for that. We also do have a sustainable public transport link here. So the public transport link that we have is a bus service that comes into the forest 3 days a week, and it's run by the North York Moors National Park Authority. It's part of their agenda to get people out of their cars and into public transport, all travelling together. And that service is really well utilised. But again, if people travel in on the bus, we're not going to charge them because they're all coming together. So it's less people parking on site, less damage to the environment. We operate what's called a discovery path system here, which is trying to encourage people to come back and take benefit out of the woodland and support their local woodland. So this would be a pass system that allows them to come in all year round for one fixed fee. And again, that's to try and promote people to use the wood. People have been sort of visiting Dalby for a number of years, really. And I remember as a child coming here, because I live in the local area, coming here in the sort of late 70s as a child, and there was not really anything here. We just came because it was a wood to run in, and there was a big field, and there was a stream down there. And people have been doing that for decades, really. But over time, people's expectations have changed, and people expect now to find a toilet, or they expect to find somewhere to go and get a cup of coffee. So that's prompted us to have to develop the site to what people require. So originally there was just nothing. There was a little entrance board in the late 70s, and that's about really what there was. And now this is what we have in terms of our facilities. So we've got a forest drive that is 9 miles long. And when I look back to the early 70s, it was just a rough track. It was a gravel surface road that lasted for 9 miles, but you probably might damage your car because there'll be some potholes. Now we've got a tarmac surface for all 9 miles of the drive. We've got 16 car parks in Dalby, different little car parks that people can park to do different things in different areas. 12 waymarked walks. These are walks that are signed and maintained by us. They're short walks, they're easy walks for people to come and just enjoy within an hour, 2 hours. 60 kilometres of graded cycle trails. I'll probably talk a little bit more about that a bit later on and show you a photograph of those. Play areas, we've got 2 play areas in Dalby, one for little children and one for much larger children. Picnic areas and barbecue areas, right throughout the 7,200 football pitch area. There's loads of picnic benches and barbecue spaces that people can enjoy. And quite often people will come and they can have a barbecue without even seeing anyone else. We've got a visitor centre with an information point, shop, exhibition area, toilets, restaurant, and a meeting room facility. We have an enchanted woodland, so that's a secret little woodland area for all kids to find and hang in. And we've got a cycle skills area and bike park. And then finally, we've still retained things like we've got a wildlife line, so if people are interested in just coming and watching birds, we've got an area for them to do that as well. The site, as I've mentioned, has developed over the years, and it's now quite a well-established development. But when we started the project of development, it was a really forward-thinking project. And it started around about 5 to 6 years ago. And the area here that you see on the map is the Low Dalby area here where we were in. And the main developments all centred around this area. We decided this was going to be our main recreational hub. This is where we would get people into. They could get the information, they could find out what they wanted to do, and then they could spread out into the rest of the area. So we based all of it around this area really. And the first phase of the development was the courtyard complex, and I believe you're going to go for a walk a little bit later. So you probably will walk south down the valley, and you'll probably walk past the courtyard complex that's down there. This facility was a lot of old farm buildings. There was a couple of cow sheds. There was an old village hall that was falling down, and we had an old visitor centre down there as well. Very old facility. All of them stone buildings, needed a lot of work and attention. So the first phase of the project was to sort out that courtyard area. We developed by retaining some of the original buildings that were there and refurbishing them, and also adding to it with some very new structures, but hopefully that complemented the original stone buildings there. We've created a complex there that has got 6 business workshops in it, and they range from a lady who makes paper, so she does the art and craft of making paper and does workshops and produces kits for people to buy, so you can go home and make your own paper. And we've got also a cycle suspension service centre, which is people can bring their cycle forks from the mountain bikes and have them serviced here. We've got a mountain bike and road bike manufacturer and designer based in the courtyard, which is a company that actually sell all over the world. And we've also got a cycling hire facility down there. We've just entered into a new phase of the cycle hire over the last year, and we've actually got a partnership now with the Cycle Touring Club of Great Britain, which are a well-established charity organisation who deliver cycling for all. So we've got that, and we've also got a cafe down there as well. People can come and sit in the courtyard complex, a nice quiet area, and enjoy the cafe, and some toilets. And finally, we retained a community resource centre down there, which was basically replacing the old village hall, but we made it updated and new. So that was the first stage of the project, and that took us around about a year to complete all of that. But it transformed the area. I mean, it was the first start, the start of the second bit of the project, which led on from there. The cycle trails that we wanted to develop started from the courtyard area. And so that made sense to be the second part of the project. And this was what we had originally. So people, as I've mentioned, used to come here to do recreational activities for decades, really, and they came and cycled. But we didn't have any trails, and so this was what was created. And it was created by default, really, because people deciding to explore the forest and cycle where they wanted. But obviously there were some pretty decent routes found, and so lots of people ended up going on the same routes. These were not really constructed to the international mountain bike confirmations in terms of the standards of construction. So we needed to look at these really, because they really weren't up to scratch. And so we spent £425,000 on